Welcome to Global Insiders Podcast. I am Ryan, the peripatetic one, bringing you information about opportunities relating to jobs, traveling, and any information that can elevate you to your rightful place in this thing called life. You can find more information and how-to methods on globalinsidersgroup.com. That is insiders with an S. And here is today's show. There are over 100 roles in the British Army, and many of them are open to Commonwealth citizens. Today, we have Oliver Daley as our special guest. Oliver is a veteran of the British Armed Forces who currently works in the financial sector in the UK and Asia. But for this episode, we will be talking to him about his Army days. Welcome to the show, Oliver. Please introduce yourself to the insiders.
Thank you, Ryan. It's a pleasure to be here. So my current role is that of a global business manager within the financial services sector. And as Ryan mentioned before, I'm a veteran of the British Armed Forces.
Okay, so what was your role in the Army?
So let me give you a little bit of context in terms of how the Army is structured. So similar to most other organizations, the Army has a goal, a purpose. And the way in which it is structured, it's structured to deliver on that purpose. So what you find with the Army is that you have at the center of it a huge operating core, and that is the infantry. And then around that you have a support infrastructure that is there to support everything that the infantry does. So within that support infrastructure, you may have like your Royal Engineers, you will have the Electrical and Mechanical Engineering Corps, you will have the Royal Logistics Corps, you
So
will have the
what I'm getting from this, it's basically like a reflection of the society. Basically, you have
it,
rules
it
that.
is it is it is very much so. If we look at organizational structures and management, it is set up in a similar way to which most other organizations will be set up, where you will have an executive branch, and then you will have at the core an operating branch that delivers on whatever the strategy that is set.
Okay, excellent, excellent. And your exact role was?
So I served across two of those support corps that you mentioned. So I was serving in the Army Medical Corps as a combat medical technician, and also served within the Royal Logistics Corps as well.
So I am thinking medical. So did you have to have like a science background or something like that?
No, actually, no. So I didn't have any formal medical training prior to joining the Army. As a matter of fact, I didn't even do any um, secondary level I didn't have any secondary level qualification within the sciences. Um, but the thing about the Army, the assumption is that they will, or not even an assumption, they will provide you with the requisite training that you need for any role that
Are given.
you undertake. Yes,
Okay,
correct. Uh,
understood, understood. What was your rank? What was your rank?
so I was a private soldier within the Army. When I wanted to sign up, or at least when I started the process, I wanted to be an officer. Um, but due to the fact that I was not living in the UK for minimum 3 years, I knew I wouldn't go past the security clearance procedures. So the recommend,
Oh, okay, interesting.
so
But
the advice,
hold that thought because I will we will be touching on that topic soon. But
right?
so you're saying okay, you had to be in the UK for 3 years at that time.
Minimum 3 years to. So as you pointed out earlier, there's over 100 roles in the army,
Yes,
but
yes.
depending on the type of role. So if you wanted to join things like your intelligence corps or become an officer, there was a minimum security
Stipulations.
clearance.
Okay, I
Exactly,
get that. Understood.
exactly.
So This sounds like a great opportunity, and I'm sure many persons don't know. I didn't know much about this until I started doing some research. So, Oliver, how did you know that Commonwealth citizens could join the British Army? How did you know that? How did you learn about that?
Um, it's an interesting one, really. So
Yes, get into it, please.
the first time I heard about the army actually was we were at the back end of completing our degree in Jamaica, and a few friends of mine were thinking about what the next opportunity should be,
Okay.
and there were three clear paths that I saw being taken. One was to remain at university and complete postgraduate studies. The second one was where a few of my friends, our peers, they moved to the UK or the US or abroad, really to teach.
Yes.
So that was an opportunity that was explored. And the third one was another set of my colleagues and peers. They moved to the UK, and they joined the army. So at that point, my notion of the army was that okay, it's not something that is attractive by way of a career,
Yes.
but because they paved the way, they joined, they went through the recruit training, and that was the
Yes.
most scary part for me.
Yes.
Um,
So that's
having
what I'm thinking also. Were you a bit concerned about eligibility and requirements, the requirements to join in the army? Because it sounds like a huge leap. I mean, you're at university in Jamaica, and then to
Yes.
move to the UK to join the army. That sounds like a huge leap. So were you
So
concerned about requirements?
not at all, because at that point, by the time I decided to join, there were pioneers ahead of me. So I had a situation where one of my friends, he joined the army from Jamaica, and I saw him going through the process, and I kept in
Okay.
contact with him when he was in the UK. And then I had another couple of friends who actually emigrated to the UK, and then when they were in the UK, they started the process. So I got both flavors. I realized that one, if you started in Jamaica, you got to a point and then you were invited to come to the UK to finish the process. And
Okay.
the other side of it is that you could come to the UK, and then you could initiate the process from there. And then both processes really merged into one, really. But it's just a case of where do you start.
Okay, okay. But what do you think is best though? Which one do you think is best? Starting from
Um,
Jamaica or going to the UK and then start?
okay, so in my experience, so the first thing to say about this is that since I've left the army, so I left the army in 2009. Since I left the army, I have
Yes.
kept in touch with the process and
The
again
procedures, the procedures, how
the
to go
procedures
about it.
and
Yes.
people who have joined after, because I constantly get asked about advice around joining the army, so I've
I
kept
can
in touch.
imagine. I can imagine.
So the process has changed slightly, but there again it's the same. I think if you want to join, the most favorable position that you could be in is to be in the army. Sorry, to be in the
In the UK.
UK. That is.
Yes.
Because then the process is clear and it is somewhat shortened. If you join from overseas, what you may find is that you end up in a slightly elongated process, because you
Okay.
do the application, you do the initial interview, and then you're waiting over a time span to get to find out whether or not you were successful at that stage, and then to
How
get an invitation.
how long is that time span? I mean, just assuming if you don't know the exact time. Yes.
It depends. It depends. I have a colleague who's going through the process now, and after filling out the application, they advised them that they will get back to him in 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
But bear in mind that even once they've notified you that you're invited to the selection stage, then they will need to send you an invitation letter, and then you would need to go to the embassy if you require embassy from wherever you are to travel to the UK.
Yes. Yes.
Um, so it may take some time before you actually start the selection
So
process.
person should at least think about a 3 month process. I mean, just to be safe. Like if you're making any plans, at
Um,
least put.
I would say 3 months to get to the UK to start the selection process. So there is a
Okay.
pre-screen. So everything that I mentioned thus far is the pre-screening,
Okay.
and then you get to the point where you go through the selection process.
All right. Let's hold
But
on. Let's hold on a bit. So, how smoothly did this go regarding the application process for you?
For me, it was very smooth. But let me give you a little bit of a wider view because it varies, right? So again, my colleague who joined from Jamaica, so he applied in Jamaica. He got through to go to the selection process, and then when he ended up in the UK, it took him about a year to actually join the army, or actually to start training. Because as you can imagine, there's a process that is set up around this, around when they actually run the selection centers, around the start dates for you, depending on the job that you've chosen. And that's why it becomes very important from the military standpoint that you have sufficient time on your visa when you're in the UK to ensure that you can go through the process. But they also facilitated that with him in the sense that when he came to the UK, he had a 6 months visa. And then when he required an extension, they provided him with the necessary documentation for him to extend his visa in the UK. So they saw the value in onboarding him, and then they facilitated that. They ensured that he kept with the process. When I joined from the UK, and I think it was a little bit different simply because there was a huge demand for combat medics, because that wasn't. They had a shortage, but that was also in the midst of the operational tours to Iraq and Afghanistan. So this was yes, that is correct. So this
deployed.
was yes. I did an operational tour in the Middle East as well.
Wow.
So because I joined during that period, and when you go to the selection center, it is not a case that you can just look at the 100+ roles and say this is what I want to do.
Okay.
What they say, you show your intent to join the army, and they say, okay, can you show me that you demonstrate to me that you have enough time in your passport, and also demonstrate to me that you have 6 months in your passport first. And the second thing was what sort of qualifications that you have, because each one of these roles have prerequisites, right? It has certain criteria that you have to meet, and it may be the case that some of them have an additional security clearance attached to it.
Okay.
So when I went there, they said, okay, here are the 20 roles which are on offer at the moment across the different corps, both that operational corps, which I spoke about, plus the support infrastructure. Here are the 20 roles which are on offer. Here are the 10 that you're currently eligible for. What would you like to do? And by the way, let me just track back. Remember, this was after we had the discussion with them, after I had the discussion with them about whether I could join as an officer.
Yes,
so once that was out the window, and then we're going through the process, they say, here are 10 things that you could potentially do across the operating corps, plus the supporting corps. And then I ended up choosing to be combat medical technician as my first choice, and then I can't remember what my second and third choice was, but one of them was in the logistics corps, and I think the third was in the adjutant general corps, the administrative branch.
Excellent.
But to close, my entire process took 4 months.
4 months. Okay.
It was only 4 months, but it took 4 months because they then realized also that I could. I only had 5 months left on my visa at the time, and it so happened that there was a selection center that was being run at the time, and because I went through the process so swiftly by way of taking the tests, all the necessary tests at the selection center.
This is the Army Development Center. That's what you're talking about, right? The selection center.
So before we even get to the Army Development Center, they have different recruitment centers set around the UK.
All right.
So that's where you sign up to join the army. But they have a test that they give to you when you go in. So it's a test that gives you a score. Based on the score, it tells you how eligible you are for the different jobs. So that's how they actually. That's a final criteria for you to actually be onboarded to a specific corps per se.
Okay, excellent. So what about the Army Development Center? Is there anything you could say about that?
Yes, I could say a lot about it. It's quite interesting actually. For me, I view myself as a very normal human being with a very normal childhood, right?
Yes.
I never I never had any inclination or any intent of joining the army. I didn't even want to join the cadets at high school. So so when I got to the army development center, what was interesting was how professional they were.
Oh.
And the entire process was set up in such a way where you knew you were joining the army, but it didn't feel like it. So you were doing a lot of sessions where they were trying to see if you could work well in a team. And it was a lot of group dynamics actually.
So a lot of
So how do
psychology.
you function?
A lot of psychology.
Yeah. So
Yes.
how do you function within a group?
Okay.
When you're in a group, what role do you take? Do you try to assert yourself as a leader, or are you happy being a part of the group, just executing the given task? Are you one of those type of persons who feel like you don't have any trust in the rest of the team and that you can do this all by yourself? And to be honest, when you're going through the process, you're never too sure about what they are looking for. So you're left with only functioning in the way in which you know how to function.
Okay.
You do you understand what I mean? Because I would love to think that in that scenario, if you think about the purpose of the army, which is to serve and protect the state,
Yes.
there are times where you have to work and function as a team. The team, as a matter of fact, that's 99% of the job.
Yes,
But
and
there are
that's
going
huge
to be
also.
there are going to be scenarios where you have to just take charge and just get it done.
Okay.
So I think they wanted to see you function in a myriad of ways or in a multiple ways.
Yes.
The next interesting side of it was, well, we did the standard, as you can imagine, fitness or not fitness, more the medical tests.
Yes.
That was fine. And then we got on to the fitness sessions. And as I said, I view myself as a very normal
Yes.
Jamaican
Man.
play. Yeah, exactly. We play outdoor a lot. We play a lot of football every evening during the week. We play a lot of volleyball. So I was naturally fit. So when I was joining, I didn't find it necessary to do any additional training for joining the army. So I
Okay,
was
so you
in
were
pretty good
basic.
shape.
That's what I was about to ask, if you were
Yeah.
in good shape before joining the
Oh
army.
yeah.
Okay.
I was in pretty good shape. So to join you had to do a mile and a half in 10 minutes 30, and I did that pretty easy without any training.
Okay.
And then they wanted to see how many pull-ups, so that is standard fitness stuff, how many pull-ups you could do. And at that point, I could do probably about 3 times the amount of pull-ups that I can do now. So,
So the
so
physical
that's what I
aspect
do.
of the army wasn't a problem for you. Excellent.
Not
Oh, okay.
not joining. But what I must say, so I'm probably going into it before I'm stepping ahead of what the questions are asking. But when you join, so after you go past the development center and you say, okay, fine, you're going to start your basic recruit training. Then as you can imagine, the fitness side of it becomes a bit more challenging and a bit more demanding. Um, you find yourself getting very fit over a 6-week period.
Okay.
So that was fine.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
So, were there any other Jamaicans there? Were you the only Jamaican in your group?
I was no, actually, yes. I was going to say I was the only one, but I had a very good friend of mine who joined at the same time as I did, and she also joined as medic as well. So
Okay.
yeah, we forged a good relationship throughout the army
Okay.
because we joined together.
Yeah. What about other nationalities other than British and
Yes,
Jamaican?
yes, for sure. There were quite a few Nepalese. So as you
Oh,
think about the Commonwealth state, they
yes.
were all there. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yes, for
I
sure.
didn't expect that. Okay, good.
So
That's excellent.
a lot of South Africans.
Yes.
Um, yeah, there were quite a
Okay.
few different nationalities there,
Any
which
Australians?
I didn't see any Australians. But the
Okay.
point that you're making, or the question you're asking, drives a very good point.
Yes.
Because if you think about this, when you're putting together about 30 in my recruit training, there were about 35 of us that
Yes.
started in that training together. and then you have 35 people from a myriad of backgrounds, right? Different experiences, different social norms, different ways of communicating.
Yes.
What the army did was, I hope this doesn't sound terrible, but the army just broke us down.
Yes. Into what they want. Into one.
I wouldn't say into what they want. They just broke us down to the point where, because we as human beings, we tend to just function the way in which we wanted, right? We want to.
Yeah.
What the army did was standardize us. They effectively said, okay, this, in order for you to function in this organization, these are the things that you need. So they effectively gave us the building blocks that we needed in order to succeed. So joining the army for me, at least going to recruit training, it was never about the physical side of it.
Yeah.
It was more about how much could you work as a team, and if one person in the team fails, then the entire team fails. So there were a lot of, again, the whole psychology around group dynamics, and they forged, or they instilled that into you from the get-go, and that has taken me through my entire military career, and is now what I would consider to be one of my core competencies even in my professional life at the moment.
Okay, good. So, earlier, you mentioned that you were in university, or you joined the army after attending university. Yeah. Do you think having a degree from a Commonwealth country has any impact on the position you can get in the army?
So if you're, the thing about it is, you're pretty hamstrung, I must say. You're hamstrung by the fact that you, even if you have a degree, you are joining, I presume you're asking from a Commonwealth standpoint.
Definitely.
So you're joining the army either from that Commonwealth country, or you have just entered the UK to join the military. And that is the most important data point, which dictates the type of role that you can get.
So it's basically what they want to the position that they want to fill, really.
No, not necessarily that way. It's more so having to pass the security clearance, because as you can imagine, you're joining the intelligence corps or you're joining the officer class. You would not want to give that role to somebody without the correct security clearance. One of the prerequisites for you going through the security clearance is that you have to serve a minimum of 3 years.
Okay.
So yes, it is advantageous that you do have you're well qualified, well educated. It is not a must. Most of the persons that I've seen in the army from Commonwealth countries, they don't necessarily have a tertiary level education. But I must say I have met a lot of brilliant guys who do have that tertiary level education up to a degree and even a master's degree in natural sciences and in social sciences and the arts. So there's a mixture, I must say.
Okay, excellent. So earlier you said you were deployed. How long were you deployed for, and what was that experience like? If you mind, just talking about a little bit. You don't
Sure. So I did one operational tour in the Middle East for 7 months.
Yes. Which country did you have?
Iraq. So
Iraq.
I was primarily based in Iraq, in Basra, but I did travel around a few countries within that region for short stints.
Okay.
Because I was primarily based in Basra.
Yes.
It pretty much put it down as the most important experience of my life thus far.
Wow. And why is that?
Because look, I'm the type of person who likes to be challenged, and growth is important to me.
Yes.
And so one of the reasons why I joined the army for pretty much all the wrong reasons, but one of the reasons why I wanted to join the army was I knew I had a lot of potential.
That's right.
As a young man. Yeah. I also knew I lacked discipline. I lacked discipline and I lacked structure. And I wanted to see the world.
Okay.
And the army
Those
solved for
sound like
those.
those sound like great reasons to me. What are you talking about?
So I joined the army for those primarily those three reasons, and the army solved for all three of them. So the situation or that experience in Iraq was quite interesting because more so around discipline structure. We trained, we drilled, we learned, but in terms of application of everything that we've learned, it was in Iraq. And let's be clear, again, the core function of the army is to serve and protect.
Yes.
So we were in that situation, serving, protecting our troops, protecting the locals. And it was interesting because I found myself working for minimum, most weeks I was working 7 days a week.
Yes.
In a bad week, I would work 6 days, and I was working minimum 15 hours per day,
Wow.
or on average around 15 hours per day. And then it's you're in that situation wherein you have a view on what the world should be, what work life balance should be.
Yes.
But then I ended up in a situation where I grew exponentially because I functioned in a way in which I never realized that I could. And even now, again, in my professional life, there are times when you're in those kind of situations where you have a decision to make, neither right nor wrong. Either decision that you choose, neither right nor wrong, or you have to work in a strenuous, stressful environment. And I just go, if I can say it, go into military mode per se.
Yes.
Just get it done. Just get it done.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And it's also helped me to compartmentalize my life, or just realize that, look, do things in phases, or everything is for a phase, or structure it in such a way where, okay, in order to get to the ultimate goal, to have that vision, that shared vision, you need to take smaller steps along the way. And as long as everyone within that group identifies what that shared vision is and continue working towards it, doing your part, then we'll get to the shared vision, but also compensating for the fact that in the event that someone gets injured or someone is not able to participate in the process, we should have enough bandwidth to complete the mission, or to deliver on that shared vision. So basically it comes down to you being in a state of readiness. You're always in a state of readiness. So regardless of whether or not you have a task to execute, you continue to train, you continue to train, continue to refine, continue to develop new skills, new techniques, and that's what I've gotten from them.
So this leads to my next question. So what would you say are the 3 greatest lessons you take from the army, from being in the army?
I think I've just given you around 20.
But give me 3. Yeah, the ones that helped you the most. Yeah, or even
the ones that helped me the most. Okay. Group dynamics.
Okay. How to work in a group.
That's, yeah, for sure. You are more powerful and stronger than you even dream you are.
Yeah. Okay.
What would I say is the third? And I guess the third ties in with second, really, is that you can really achieve most things that you want to achieve. You just have to put a process around it, and drive, continue to drive towards it. Add a fourth as well. Nothing beats training. You have to train. You have to continue to train. You have to continue to train, and refine your skill. Because when I think about, at the time when I was going through the army, I didn't reflect on this. It was annoying to me, to be honest.
Yeah.
But what we did on a daily basis was train, drill. The only thing we did getting up every day was fitness and refining our skills and techniques for the job at hand, or for our role within that support infrastructure. So what that meant was that, because in steady state we had drilled the process so much, when we got into a strenuous environment, then it became second nature. I can't remember the person who said that. Look, you have to put in 10,000 hours in order to master anything.
Yes.
And that is what they are.
Malcolm Gladwell.
Oh, Gladwell,
Yeah,
yes, that's it.
Yes, he made it famous. But
10,000 hours, right?
That's right. Yes.
And that's what we did. We definitely put in the work when we were in steady state, when we were back in base in the UK. And when we got into strenuous situations, or were into situations where more than normal was demanded of us, we were able to deliver. A simple mistake will cost you your life, or cost you even worse than costing you your life, cost you your colleague to your right's life, right?
That's right.
Because you are your brother's keeper in the military. And to be honest, it is the thing that I struggle the most with in my professional life now. When I see that selfish trait in individuals, it really annoys me. Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Understood. So, if a friend said, Oliver, I am going to join the British Army, what would you say to them?
As I said, I've coached a few people through this, so I'm very familiar with that question. To be fair, a few years ago, a very good friend of mine rang up and said, Oliver, I'm thinking of joining the army. What do you think? I said to him, I would never encourage you to.
Yes.
But if it is the path that you've chosen, then I will give you the information that you need in order to be successful at it. It is a good career, but like anything else, you have to go into it with a purpose. You have to go into it with objectives.
Yeah.
You have to you have to know what you want from that process. Yeah. And then that will dictate what that experience will be for you. For myself, I would say I had an amazing 4.5 years within the army. Okay. But again, it just depends on the individual. It is quite risky, as you can imagine. But again, it just depends on the role that you do, and what your purpose is, what you want to achieve out of it.
So that's the shortest amount of time persons can stay in the army. Once you join, that's 4.5 years.
Correct. In the British Army, you have to do a minimum contract of 4.5 years.
Okay, good.
And then you choose whether or not you want to extend or you move on to something else.
All right. I would be remiss if I didn't ask this question. So, do you think joining the army helps a person with immigration issues? For example, becoming a UK citizen or getting family members to live with them?
Oh, certainly. I mean, yes, certainly for both. So as part of the process, as I spoke a bit about the fact that you had to have a minimum six months. At the time when I joined, a minimum 6 months right to stay in the UK at that point, and that can be your simply your visa. But once you get through the development center, so once you join the army, you are given the right to remain in the UK while serving in the army. You can think of it as a work permit per se.
Okay.
For the extent of the time that you're within the army, and then that presents you with the opportunity, once you have meet all the requisite requirements that's set out by the Home Office in the UK, that gives you the opportunity to naturalize. Okay. First to become a permanent resident or to naturalize, but again, in my experience, and this is simply my experience, yes, the army is a unique scenario in the sense that the normal recourse or normal process that happens in the UK is that you spend some time, you meet the criteria that allows you to become a resident, and then you apply for indefinite leave to remain. Thereafter, you meet some further requirements, and then you can naturalize as a British citizen. Okay. With the army, or the process that I went through, is that once you join the army, it's in some sense you are given that indefinite leave to remain from the point where you join, and then you spend a requisite period, and then you're able to naturalize without having to apply for the indefinite leave to remain. So you can just you can naturalize as a citizen. And
just to put months and years on it, how long is that?
I think 5 years is a safe guideline.
Okay, good. All right.
5 years is a safe guideline to think about it.
Okay. Good.
And then as it relates to family, so the army is brilliant with this. So most of my colleagues who joined, they had their family back home in that Commonwealth country, and as part of them signing up, the army would facilitate them bringing their family to the UK and providing for a fee, providing housing, affordable housing, so that you could take care of your family whilst you serve as well.
What about plane tickets though? Even for the recruiting process.
No, you would have to fund that.
Okay,
You'd have to fund. So you have to fund yourself up to the point where you actually turn up for recruit training.
Okay.
But thereafter, you are the responsibility of the army. Yeah.
So they take care of it. Okay, so now we're at the end. So the final question: if you could go back in time, would you do it again?
Yes,
Okay.
certainly. Certainly. Because I say certainly for a number of reasons. Look, I mentioned that whole situation where I was on operational tour. For me, like, it's something that I reflect on constantly.
Yes.
In terms of what it has afforded me, in terms of skill sets, in terms of how much I've grown, in terms of how resilient I am,
Yes.
and in terms of how hungry I am for further success.
Yes.
So yes, for certain, and but I will put some guardrails around that, some caveat,
Yes.
by saying that I think I had a pretty good approach to the military, and that has so I had some goals, some milestones I needed to meet. For instance, when I was in the military, I wanted to get to grad school, so I wanted to get my postgraduate degree. I managed to do that, and the military again was very supportive in terms of providing me with ample time to complete my studies.
What do you have your postgraduate degree in?
So my first degree, which I got at the University of West Indies in Jamaica,
Yes.
was in economics and statistics.
Yes.
And then I read for a postgraduate degree at the University of Reading in the UK in investment management, and I'm back at University of Reading as we speak, completing another postgraduate degree in real estate investment and finance.
Fantastic. So we'll definitely have to bring you back on the show to talk about that aspect of your life, or that part of your life too.
Indeed. So yes, indeed. I would even add a little bit more by saying that that's one of the things that I got from the army as well. So because I was able to successfully complete that degree, it's also given me the confidence that I'm able to work and complete further studies. So hence the reason why I've signed up to this course as well, which is great. But as you said, we definitely should have some conversations around life as it is now, as opposed to back then in the army.
I know,
at some
but
point.
yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, Oliver, thank you so much for sharing incredible information with us. I mean, believe me,
you're welcome,
this
Ryan.
was really good. So thank you for coming on the show. And
you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.
Once again, I would like to thank Oliver for coming on the show. It was really informative, all the things that he had to say. And if you would like to continue that conversation with Oliver, you can do so at OLDALEY. That's OLDALEY on Instagram, okay? All Daily on Instagram. And also, if you'd like to continue the conversation with us, you can do so at globalinsidersgroup.com. That's globalinsidersgroup.com. Alright, thank you guys. Take care. Thanks for listening today. I hope you are inspired. You can find more helpful and motivational material at globalinsidersgroup.com. That is, insiders with an S. You can also keep in touch at Global Insiders on Instagram. See you next time, but remember,
You can be your own superhero. Bye.